Endless emails, meetings, and reports, the black hole of modern office life. What if I told you there's a tool that pays for itself by giving you back those lost hours? According to Forrester's total economic impact model of a composite organization with 25,000 employees and $6.25 billion in revenue, risk-adjusted returns reached 116% over 3 years. Not bad for something hiding in your inbox. Here's the flight plan. Go to market, where revenue shifts up. Operations, where wasted hours become measurable savings. And people and culture, where onboarding accelerates and attrition slows. Along the way, you'll see a pragmatic lens for testing whether Copilot pays off for specific roles. But before we talk multipliers and pipelines, let's confront the baseline. You already lose staggering amounts of time to the daily grind. The hidden cost of routine work. Picture your calendar, a tight orbit of back-to-back meetings circling the week, an asteroid belt of unread emails and stray reports drifting like debris. The view looks busy enough to impress any passing executive, but here's the trouble. It's not actually accelerating the ship. It's gravity posing as momentum. Most of the energy in a modern workday isn't spent on breakthrough ideas or strategic leaps forward. It gets consumed by upkeep, clearing inboxes, formatting slides, patching together updates. Each task feels small, but stacked together, they create a gravitational pull that slows progress. The danger is that it feels like motion. You answer another email, the outbox looks full, but the work that builds value drifts further from reach. Busy does not equal valuable. That mismatch, the appearance of activity without the substance of impact, is the hidden cost of routine work. Companies bleed resources here quietly and consistently because time is being siphoned away from goals that actually change outcomes. The most expensive waste isn't dramatic project failure, it's the slow leak of 1,000 minor chores. Forrester's research put numbers to this problem. In one example, they found product launch preparation that normally took 5 full days shrank to just about 2 hours when Copilot shouldered the labor of drafting, structuring, and organizing. That's not shaving minutes off, it's folding entire calendars of busy work into a fraction of the time. Multiply that shift across repeated projects, and the scale of reclaimed hours becomes impossible to ignore. From there, the model continued. On average, Copilot users freed about 9 hours per person per month. Now, here's the essential qualifier. Forrester built that figure on a composite company model, risk-adjusted for realism. It's an average, not a promise. Actual results hinge on role adoption speed and whether your underlying data is ready for Copilot to make use of. What you should take away isn't a guarantee, but a credible signal of what becomes possible when the routine is streamlined. And those hours matter because they are flexible currency. If you simply spend them on clearing the inbox marginally faster, then not much changes. The smarter move is to reassign them. One practical suggestion, pick a single recurring deliverable in each role, be it a weekly report, meeting summary, or pitch draft, and make Copilot the first draft engine for that task. This way, the recovered time flows straight into higher order work instead of evaporating back into low-value cycles. Imagine what that looks like with consistency. A marketing coordinator reclaims a morning every month to refine messaging instead of copying charts. A project manager transforms hours of recap writing into actual forward planning. Even one intentional swap like this can alter how a day feels. Less tactical scrabble, more strategic intent. That's the hidden dividend of those 9 hours, space that allows different choices to be made. Of course, the risk remains if you don't prepare the terrain. Without good data governance, without teaching teams how to integrate Copilot thoughtfully, the time gains dilute into noise. The tool will still accelerate drafts, but the uplift shrinks if the drafts aren't used for meaningful outputs. Success depends as much on organizational readiness as on the software's cleverness. So when someone balks at paying $30 per seat, the real comparison isn't fee against zero. It's fee against the hours currently being lost to administrative drag. Copilot doesn't so much add a new expense as it reveals an invisible one you're already paying, the cost of busy without value. And when you shift perspective from hours to outcomes, the story sharpens even further. Because the real multiplier isn't just time returned, it's how small fractions of efficiency ripple forward when applied to critical engines like the motions of a sales pipeline, and that's where the impact becomes unmistakable. And go-to-market, the sales engine upgrade. Nowhere is leverage more visible than in go-to-market. Sales engines magnify small inputs into outsized results, which means a fractional gain can tilt the entire arc of revenue. That's why the numbers matter. In the Forrester composite model, qualified opportunities rose about 2.7% and win rates another 2.5%. On paper, those sound like tiny nudges. In practice, because pipelines are multipliers, those margins compound at every stage. Prospecting, pitch, close. By year 3, that modeled company was up $159.1 million in incremental revenue, simply by smoothing the points of friction in the system it already had. You can picture how Copilot fits into that picture. Marketing used to wrestle with campaign drafts for days. Now they spin up structured outlines in hours with prompts that add hooks teams wouldn't have brainstormed on their own. Topics hit inboxes while they're still timely. Sales teams find half their prep already roughed in, draft slides aligned with company data, first-pass summaries based on what the prospect actually cared about last call, even cues for next engagement drawn from interaction history. Qualification, the eternal swamp, narrows too. Instead of drowning in weak signals, reps get a list shaped from patterns Copilot teased out of the noise. That lift in focus is often the boundary between nurturing a real deal and losing it to a competitor pacing just faster. Without the tool, much of the week still bleeds out through bottlenecks. Reps grind through manual personalization, copy-paste the same boilerplate decks, and miss follow-ups in the crush of tabs. Energy evaporates. Deals stall. Managers squint at dashboards and wonder why goals keep slipping despite heroic hours. Copilot's edge isn't about revolutionary tactics, it's about removing drag. Fewer hours lost in preparation. More lift placed directly under engagement and closing. The mechanics are simple but powerful. More qualified opportunities at the top feed a broader funnel. Better win rates mean more of them make it out the bottom. Stack the changes and you begin to feel the compounding. It's not magic, it's just math finally working in your favor. Marginal shifts are magnified because each stage inherits the previous gain. A satellite nudged a fraction of a degree gets slung into an entirely different orbit. But here's the caveat. Forrester also flagged that these gains aren't plug and play. The model assumed cleaned permissioned data and teams willing to adopt new habits. Feed Copilot outdated or messy information and it simply generates more noise. Skip the training and reps won't trust its drafts, they'll drift back to their old process. Governance and coaching act like thruster adjustments. They keep the ship moving toward its actual destination rather than sliding back into inefficiency. When those conditions line up, though, the benefits start to crystallize. Forrester estimated a net present value of roughly $14.8 million tied to sales and retention gains in just 3 years for the composite case. And those figures don't count the peripheral boosts: faster onboarding of new hires, fewer proposals stranded mid-draft, smoother handoffs between marketing and sales. All of that is productivity you feel but won't see in a balance sheet line. The signal is clear enough. Copilot doesn't just free hours, it transforms the mechanics of revenue itself. It turns a creaking sales engine into a tuned machine. Faster prep, cleaner leads, steadier pursuit, and customer interactions guided by sharper insight. The result isn't just speed, it's consistency that builds trust and closes deals. And the moment the sails are trimmed and pulling harder, a new question surfaces. If the revenue engine is running hotter, what about the rest of the crew? Specifically, what do you gain when thousands of employees uncover hours they never had before? That's where the operational story begins. And operations reclaiming 9 hours per person. Forrester modeled about 9 hours saved per Copilot user per month and estimated operational benefits worth roughly $18.8 million in present value for the composite organization. That figure isn't pulled from thin air, it comes from detailed assumptions. The model excludes sales, marketing, and customer service roles to avoid counting the same benefit twice. It values each recaptured hour at an average fully burdened rate, and crucially, it assumes only half of those hours are put back into productive work. So when you hear the dollar translation, remember, it's not automatic. It's a scenario grounded in specific choices about how people actually use their recovered time. 9 hours on its own doesn't sound like a revolution. It's just a little more than a workday each month. But once you pan back to 1,000 employees, the arithmetic turns striking. Thousands of hours suddenly freed without a single extra hire. The cost savings feel invisible at the level of one person's packed schedule, but the aggregate is unmistakable. The Forrester model captured that compounding, showing operating expenses thinning by about 0.24%. A small fraction, but at enterprise scale, that sliver translates into millions peeled off the budget. Where do those hours come from? The familiar culprits. Meeting notes that once meant replaying an entire recording now collapse into a digest generated in minutes. Drafting long messages doesn't involve toggling half a dozen windows. Document summaries that might have cost an afternoon arrive in seconds. Even common chores like sorting through an inbox or searching for a lost file shrink substantially when Copilot automates the scut work. It's not dramatic, but week after week the drag vanishes. And because this efficiency isn't evenly spread, pockets of an organization feel the impact sooner. In finance, analysts report slashing reporting cycles down to seconds on once tedious steps. HR teams find training program materials drafted and organized fast enough to accelerate entire rollouts. Each function pulls different levers, but they all share the same outcome. Tasks that devoured bandwidth are stripped down to fractions of their former size. It's worth noting, not every user climbs the curve the same way. Sophisticated power users sometimes save 20 hours per month. Others only claw back a handful at first, hesitating with prompts or defaulting to old workflows. Adoption curves matter, which is why leadership can't just roll out licenses and walk away. You need training, good data governance, and the cultural permission for people to lean on the tool. Otherwise, the model's averages don't materialize in practice. So how do you actually test whether this lands in your world? Don't start with a grand corporate dashboard. Start with one repetitive cross-functional activity. something like meeting recaps, contract summaries, or routine email triage. Track how long it eats over 2 weeks, then layer in Copilot, use it consistently for that very task, and compare the hours. Whatever your number is, that's your version of the 9 hours. Suddenly, the abstract model has a local benchmark you can touch. When results are reinvested wisely, the difference is tangible. Imagine a project manager who once lost afternoons tidying slides. Now, with presentation scaffolding done in minutes, they redirect their time toward narrative and clarity, the part that actually persuades stakeholders. Or an IT lead who used to assemble stats by hand, now free to focus on what those stats say about performance trends. These are the same roles, yet the contribution shifts from tactical survival to higher value work. From there, the compounding begins. Some of the saved time dissolves into lighter workloads. That's inevitable. But because the model assumes 50% of the time gets funneled into productive tasks, progress accelerates where it matters. Drafts are finished sooner, projects hit milestones faster, cross-team requests wait less. The system runs smoother, not because people are forced to sprint harder, but because hidden friction got sanded away. So operational gains show up as slimmer costs and sharper throughput. Even modest percentages add up when layered across thousands of staff, and yet these balance sheet wins are only half the story. Numbers capture dollars, but they don't capture energy, morale, or exhaustion. That's the terrain where efficiency crosses over into something harder to measure, but just as critical. People and culture, ROI through humans, not just math. Numbers alone won't tell you why employees burn out, leave early, or stay longer than expected. That's the heart of people and culture, ROI through humans, not just math. You can chart revenue lift and operational savings, but the texture of someone's workday, the stress, the confidence, the sense of belonging, never shows up neatly in the ledger. And yet, those human factors steer performance more decisively than any pivot table ever will. Onboarding is the first stress test. A new hire arrives with energy but spends weeks fumbling through files, asking repeat questions and waiting on answers that dribble in. Each delay costs time and chips at morale. When this cycle repeats for hundreds of recruits, the cost compounds. And when a frustrated new hire quits within a quarter or a veteran leaves with years of institutional knowledge, the organization pays again to rebuild what it had already bought once. Forrester's composite model assigned shape to this fog. They modeled onboarding acceleration up to 25%, about 11 days saved per new hire by year 3. Attrition dropped by as much as 5% in that same period. And when they translated what could be measured into value, the present benefit for people and culture factors was about $3.2 million over 3 years. These are modeled outcomes, not universal promises, but they frame what's possible when the friction in early workflows eases and people stick around longer. The mechanics are straightforward. Copilot can answer basic questions without pulling another teammate away, surface templates and prior work instantly, and draft the routine documents that otherwise eat weeks of someone's ramp. That doesn't just save time, it reduces the sense of incompetence new hires often feel in silence. Confidence arrives earlier, contribution starts sooner, and teams get the benefit without the endless warm-up phase. Retention matters just as much. Every departure drains institutional knowledge, why a compliance review follows a quirk, how a system was originally configured, or who to call when a file goes missing. When Copilot reduces frustration by offloading tedious tasks and guiding workflow execution, people feel less like anonymous cogs and more like supported contributors. That's what makes them stay. And even a 5% attrition shift in a large workforce reshapes the balance sheet through lower hiring costs and steadier team composition. Still, it's a mistake to pretend every cultural effect can be monetized neatly. Some benefits, higher morale, willingness to innovate, reduced burnout, are difficult to capture in a model. Forrester treated these as unquantified upside, acknowledging they exist but resisting the temptation to jam them into a dollar sell. That caution is worth repeating. Not everything meaningful fits into a financial formula. Culture is the climate inside the ship. It sets whether people contribute fully or simply drift. Practical adoption is the catalyst. Results in this domain don't appear just because Copilot is toggled on. Forrester and Microsoft both stress role-based skilling and staged rollouts. That means onboarding teams, hiring managers, or sales cohorts trained together so usage builds into habits. When learning is shared inside these groups, confidence compounds, and the practical gains, faster onboarding, lower attrition, actually follow. Skip that groundwork and the human benefits evaporate into unmeasured potential. One simple application, take the group most entangled in repetitive document prep, say a hiring team writing job descriptions, and pilot Copilot there first. Instead of 4 hours spent drafting, the tool can cut this to half an hour. That's a concrete saving, but more importantly, it frees staff to refine fit, strategy, or outreach rather than grind away at formatting. Each role-based rollout plants examples others can trust, proof that the headline numbers aren't abstract promises but lived improvements. From here, the cultural return becomes visible, if not always quantifiable. Employees feel supported rather than stretched. Managers notice smoother onboarding pipelines. Cohesion builds as fewer people leave, and the ones who stay are aligned on both process and purpose. These aren't soft perks. They shape whether skill compounds inside the organization or drains away with every departure. So what emerges is a broader view of ROI. Dollars saved, talent retained, morale lifted. Some of it gets modeled, some of it remains unquantified upside, but together it clarifies why Copilot isn't simply a line item expense. It's leverage on the human system that drives every other metric you care about. And once you recognize the people side of the balance, another question pushes forward, the one every CFO eventually blurts out. If all these streams of value exist, when does the math actually swing positive? The payback clock. How soon does it cover its costs? The real test lands in finance. How long until Copilot covers its own tab? This section is the payback clock. Copilot's license list price is $30 per user per month. In Forrester's composite model, the 3-year risk-adjusted present value of total costs came to about $17.06 million. That includes far more than license fees, professional services, and IT staff to implement and manage the system, plus training and discovery work that made up a large share. Against those costs, the modeled benefits stacked up quickly. Payback landed in roughly 10 months, and the 3-year ROI came in at about 116%. With a net present value of $19.7 million, it matters to spell out those cost drivers. The license fee is only the surface. Beneath it are waves of support, IT provisioning, integration with existing systems, compliance checks, and dedicated staff time. Then there's training. This isn't optional overhead. It's one of the largest buckets because end users need structured instruction and ongoing discovery space to explore the tool. Without that, adoption sputters and the returns slow. If you're sketching out your own budget, these are the line items you want to mark in red ink: licenses, management and setup, and especially training. Now, what does a 10-month payback feel like in practice? Picture rolling licenses out to your staff in the first quarter. You shoulder the upfront hit, fees, onboarding, coaching sessions. As the year grinds forward, the recovered hours, faster deals, and smoother onboarding begin to pile up. Before the fiscal year closes, those gains balance the expense. By the time finance teams prepare annual reports, the meter has already ticked past break even. For enterprise technology, where payback often takes years just to surface, that's unusually short. Here's the catch: the number isn't guaranteed. Forrester's study applied risk adjustments based on real company interviews, but outcomes still vary. If you deploy in a disorderly rush with messy data and little governance, the adoption curve flattens. Employees ignore the tool, drafts come out sloppy, value fragments across teams. On the other hand, a phased rollout, what the composite used with 3,000 licenses in year 1, 6,000 in year 2, and 10,000 by year 3, creates momentum. Training runs in cohorts. Governance policies are ready. People know when and how to lean on Copilot. Under those conditions, the clock to payback runs closer to the optimistic scenario. That's why Forrester presented these outcomes as modeled, risk-adjusted outputs, not universal guarantees. Their analysis was commissioned by Microsoft, built on structured interviews and surveys with current users, then normalized into a composite company for comparability. Always treat it as a directional blueprint, not a personal report card. If you want accuracy for your own case, run the numbers yourself with the ROI calculator. Plug in your headcount, hourly labor costs, and rollout plan. That's how the headline numbers translate from a model somewhere into us here. Look again at the surplus. Forrester's 3-year view stacked up $36.8 million in total benefits for the composite against $17.06 million in costs. After everything, license fees, IT labor, external services, training, the net came out positive by $19.7 million. That figure doesn't even include the intangible extras: fewer late-night emails, higher morale, lower frustration. The spreadsheet records money, but the real prize extends beyond clean math. And that's a useful point to pause on, because financial clarity is satisfying, but the bigger story isn't just a ledger that balances. It's what happens when time, focus, and energy are freed up across your workforce. The real question isn't only how soon the investment covers itself, it's what you choose to do with the capacity that follows. And that folds us back to the broader prize waiting beyond costs and returns. So here's where the story closes. Copilot ROI is more than a tidy cell in a ledger. It's hours reclaimed from inbox purgatory, funnels moving faster, and workdays that feel less like slow oxygen leaks. The gain is as much human as financial. Remember, the headline numbers come from a Forrester composite and will vary. That's why you should test it directly. Step 1, map a single 30-60 minute task per role Copilot could absorb. Step 2, clock baseline time and cost for 2 weeks. Step 3, plug those numbers into the ROI calculator in the show notes. Now your move: drop one task you'd happily hand to Copilot in the comments. Meeting recaps, first draft proposals. I'll be watching the feed and pulling the sharpest entries into the discussion.